So here are some insights from an immigration lawyer from an established law firm that handles hundreds of EB1As, NIWs, and O1s on reference letters for EB1A and O1. Specifically on who you should be asking for references from and why you should be asking people who are familiar with your work for references and not just focus on the person's seniority within your company. And for those of you who don't know me, my name is Jason and I work with several top immigration lawyers, which is where my EB1A and O1 profile building insights come from. I also run a paid newsletter for $12 per month, through which you can get access to my newsletter resources, which includes a profile building opportunities database that lists over 400 opportunities categorized by field and criteria. You will also get access to my private group where members have been able to find co-authors for papers and articles, have been able to find collaborators in general for profile building, and have also been able to find opportunities shared by other members. Members of the group also get access to virtual events with top immigration lawyers, and I regularly host these to help answer some of their questions. I'm also now looking to host more lawyers within the group chat itself. So periodically I will have lawyers answer questions and provide insights on recent adjudications. If you're interested in these resources, check out the link in the comments. But going back to the video, here's an excerpt from an insight session that I recently held on EB1A and O1R fees. And if you're interested in this specific insight session, check out the link in the comments. But here's the excerpt on reference letters.
And then in terms of recommendation letter is a great question, and obviously super important for both O1 and EB1A. But first thing I would say is obviously like any attorney, but especially like myself and anyone at Boundless is going to like, we feel like a big part of what we do is guide you through the recommendation letter process. You may want to sort of explore and chat with people who might be willing to sign letters for you, but this is a big part of what we're going to work on with you in a part of the process. Basically, in the terms of like what we're looking for in the structure of these, we're looking for individuals who can speak knowledgeably about projects that you had an impact on, or the impact of projects you've had an impact on, and that they are in some way experts in the field also. They do not have to be the biggest expert. I always like to give a sort of half joking response that like most of you probably, wouldn't get a letter from the CEO of your employer if unless it's a smaller employer. But usually that's not helpful because they don't have, in most cases, the sort of day-to-day insight on your technical work and how it is actually impactful for the company. So I usually recommend, like a director, a skip level manager, somebody who is also a sort of leading presence in your field of expertise potentially, but also has the knowledge to sort of give details about what you have been working on. And finally, important point you raised is sort of what is the sort of crucialness or criticality of getting those sort of quantitative figures in there. And I would answer that it is important, but not a requirement. USCIS likes to see details. And so obviously when we can give them impact in some way, that's always helpful. That being said, I've worked with dozens of clients who may work for companies where their directors are willing to sign a letter of recommendation, but they're not willing to attest to like specific revenue percentage increases. That's okay. And in some cases, USCIS may even kind of come back and ask us, where did you get that number from? I think what's more important is that they can provide specific details about your work and why it's important, and that where possible, we can corroborate that in externally. So an example without using sort of quantitative metrics might be, Mr. X, I oversaw him as he led the development of our like AI medical bot. This was like a huge, this was critical to like the launch of the company's like new AI platform. This, as evidence of this sort of importance of this project, it was widely covered in, Forbes or other sort of leading publications. And even if your name or isn't mentioned in those publications, we're still doing the work of sort of validating and corroborating that project by explaining to the officer why it's important and where they can find that.
So just to summarize what he discussed, you want to be focusing on people who can actually talk about your work, who actually know what your work is. The most senior leader or a very senior manager, for example, within your company may not actually be very familiar with your work and may therefore not be able to provide the credibility you want for your claims, or provide the explanatory context that helps explain the significance of your work in layman terms. So that is what you want to be focusing on when it comes to reference letters. You don't just want to focus on finding the most senior person who will be willing to attest to your claims. You actually want someone who has the background to talk about your work, actually understands your work at a very fundamental level, and not just someone who is just going to check off what you say without providing that additional credibility, that additional explanatory context. And if you want to learn more about EB1A and O1 reference letters, check out this video.